Most people think building muscle with just your body weight is a compromise, like you're doing the best you can until you can afford a gym membership. And honestly, that's the thing I want to completely flip on its head today because the science says something way different from what most people assume. This video is about building real muscle with zero equipment, and before you think you've heard this before, you probably haven't heard it like this. Most bodyweight content just tells you to do push-ups and pull-ups and hope for the best. What we're actually going to cover today is the specific mechanisms that make bodyweight training work, a few moves almost nobody talks about, and the one honest limit you need to know so you're never spinning your wheels. There are 10 things on this list. The last one is the one almost no calisthenics channel will ever tell you, and it's probably the most useful thing here. So let's get into it. The second most important thing to understand before anything else is this: the weight isn't the point, the resistance is. Here's what I mean. Research out of McMaster University set out to determine whether the relative load you lift actually determines how much muscle you build, and what they found was that it doesn't. Subjects either lifted around 30 to 50% of their max for 20 to 25 reps per set, or 75 to 90% of their max for 8 to 12 reps, with all sets taken to volitional failure. Both groups built the same amount of muscle, same growth, different loads entirely. So what that tells you is that high-rep bodyweight sets aren't a watered-down version of real training. They grow just as much muscle as long as you're pushing close to failure. And this connects directly to the first thing on the list, which is leverage, because leverage is how you make bodyweight hard enough to matter. Think about it this way. When you do a normal push-up, gravity is pulling you down at a pretty forgiving angle. But the second you slide your hands forward into what's called a pseudo-planche position, your body has to fight gravity at a dramatically worse angle. Your shoulders and chest are suddenly doing way more work than they'd do on a heavy bench press, and you're using zero equipment. The resistance isn't the dumbbell, it's the lever arm between your body and the ground. Once you get that, the whole "you need weights to build muscle" argument starts to fall apart. So now you know loads don't matter as much as effort, and you know leverage creates that effort. The next question is, where in the rep does the growth actually happen? This is where it gets interesting. The pattern across recent research is clear. Training the muscle in its lengthened stretch position drives disproportionate hypertrophy. The lengthened portion of a rep is doing most of the hypertrophy work, and if you isolate just that portion, what researchers call lengthened partials, you can match or even exceed the growth you'd get from a full rep. And here's the bodyweight angle nobody talks about. Deep push-ups, deep dips, deep split squats, these all load the muscle exactly at that stretch position. Your chest goes below your hands. Your hip flexor is fully elongated at the bottom of a lunge. That's not just good range of motion, that's you targeting the exact part of the rep where the growth signal is strongest. Now here's something that builds on this idea, and it's genuinely a cheat code, especially if you're a beginner. You are roughly 30 to 40% stronger lowering a weight than lifting it. That's not a motivational statement, it's a physiological fact. Your muscles produce more force eccentrically, meaning on the way down, than they do concentrically, on the way up. So what that means in practice is that you can train a movement you literally cannot perform yet. Can't do a pull-up, jump up to the top position and lower yourself as slowly as possible. That's a negative, and it's overloading your back and biceps through a range of motion your concentric strength can't access yet. Same exact principle with Nordic hamstring curls. You anchor your feet, lower your body toward the ground with control, and your hamstrings are getting one of the most effective eccentric training stimuli that exists. Which leads into the next point, and this one surprises people. Most people assume you just can't build your hamstrings without weights. Leg curls, Romanian deadlifts, stiff legs. Those are the go-to moves. But the Nordic hamstring curl requires nothing but something to anchor your feet. A large systematic review and meta-analysis published in the British Journal of Sports Medicine found that programs including Nordic hamstring curls reduced hamstring injuries by up to 51%, compared to programs that didn't include them. And on top of injury prevention, the eccentric loading it creates is legitimately one of the most effective ways to build hamstring strength and size. Most home lifters have never even tried it. Now we're about halfway through, and I want to remind you, we haven't gotten to the thing almost no calisthenics channel will admit. That's still coming. But before that, let's talk about why most bodyweight lifters plateau, because it's not what you think. The typical answer is, you ran out of resistance. But that's wrong. What you actually ran out of is progression ideas, because bodyweight training has at least 6 ways to make something harder, and most people only use one. They just add reps. But you can also make the leverage harder, going from incline push-ups to flat, then to archer push-ups, then to a one-arm push-up. You can increase the range of motion, you can slow down the tempo, you can add a pause at the bottom, which, by the way, puts you right back in that lengthened position where the growth happens. You can go unilateral, and you can shrink your rest period so your muscles are doing more work in less time. That's 6 levers. Master the latter and you genuinely never run out of resistance. And if you're thinking legs are still the weak link, 2 moves fix that completely. The first is the Nordic curl we just covered. The second is the sissy squat, which almost nobody programs at home. It's basically a bodyweight leg extension. You lean back, bend at the knee, and lower yourself into a deep stretch through the quad. It biases the quads in their lengthened position, which is exactly the stimulus we talked about earlier. The claim that you can't grow your quads without a leg extension machine is just flat out wrong if you know about this move. Now, upper body. Let's talk about rings and dips for a second, because this is where bodyweight can actually compete with, and in some ways beat, a barbell setup. When you do dips on rings, 2 things happen that a bench press can't replicate. The instability of the rings forces your stabilizers to work constantly, and the depth of the dip lets your chest travel through a bigger range of motion under a loaded stretch. EMG research shows PEC and stabilizer activation can match or exceed a flat barbell bench in that position. Plus, you're training scapular control the entire time, which the bench press physically prevents because your shoulder blades are pinned to the pad. And then there's abs. If there's one muscle group where bodyweight is arguably the superior tool, it's the core. You progress abs through leverage, not load. A hanging leg raise or an ab wheel rollout extends the lever arm far more effectively than stacking plates on a crunch machine. The longer the lever, the harder it gets. And that progression is essentially infinite. You can always make it harder by extending the range, slowing the tempo, or pausing at the hardest point. If this is the kind of training breakdown you want more of, drop a comment below and tell me which of these surprised you most. It genuinely helps me know what to cover next, and it helps other people find this video. And if you want to go deeper on any of this, progressive overload, eccentric training, or building a full program around these ideas, I've got videos on all of it. Go watch those after this. Alright, here's the honest part. The thing almost nobody in the calisthenics space will actually say out loud. Bodyweight training can build an incredible upper body. It can build serious legs if you're doing single leg work and Nordic curls. But there are 2 areas where it eventually hits a real ceiling: back thickness and posterior chain hip hinge strength. Heavy rows, the kind that build that thick, wide back, eventually need something to pull against. A bar, rings, or even a loaded backpack. And hip hinge movements like deadlifts, where you're loading the entire posterior chain through a long range of motion, eventually need load that your body weight alone can't replicate. Knowing that limit isn't a reason to give up on bodyweight training. It's the reason you can trust everything else on this list. Because an honest ceiling is way more useful than false promises. So here's where we landed. Leverage creates resistance without iron. Light loads taken to failure build the same muscle as heavy ones. The bottom of your rep, the stretch position, is where most of the growth happens. Eccentrics let you train movements before you can do them. Nordics build hamstrings, sissy squats build quads, rings and deep dips can out-recruit a bench press, and abs progress through leverage infinitely. And progressive overload has 6 levers, not 1. Use all of them and you won't plateau. You came in thinking bodyweight was a compromise. It's not. It's a complete system with one honest limit, And now you know exactly where that limit is and how far away it is. Go train.